To give you a very quick overview of what is going to happen for the rest of the budget season, I am obligated by the charter to present you a proposed budget. From there, the ball is in your court. Of course, I'll be working alongside you, and we'll be working on tweaking numbers as you see. But what this is a proposed budget as recommended by the city manager and finance department working with me. What I would also ask is that along the way, if there are questions, we are scheduled for a public hearing for the budget and tax rate for September 13th. So what I would really like to do is to work with all of you individually first and make sure that we are addressing all of the needs through this budget for each one of you. And then if there is a need for a budget workshop that we all need to come together, there are just too many big items that we need to shift, then I would ask that you all consider, or if it is available, I'd like for y'all to think about penciling in September 10th from like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. to really be able to hash out anything. Hopefully it wouldn't take that long, but if we could block that time out so that we could go into public hearing if we do need to even have that workshop. So just want to put that out there. Think about it. Let me know. So without further ado, first we're going to start off with look at all those people. We have some staff additions. Some of them are we have our executive leadership team. Some are new. Some have been with us for a long time. One of the big things that we have done is that we have actually retooled the staff a little bit. We took some positions and reclassed them. So for those of you, a perfect example of that is our assistant city manager position was actually not a new position. It was actually, we took our community development director and reclassed that into an assistant city manager. Also, as part of the last budget cycle, we had created the HR position. We also created a communications director position as a mid-year addition. We created our information technology director position, and you'll see in this budget a flesh out of that position. We also have, we've added a deputy of the EDC as well, and that is Landis. So, we've had some things kind of in a mid-year phase, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. What I have for you this evening, I want to show you, because one of the biggest things is what you have is fiscal year 22 was a great year for us. I mean, really, the amount of work that was done was pretty phenomenal. So what you'll see here is that the city cleared about 42,000 linear feet of drainage ditches, outfalls, and our major estuaries that lead to Dickinson Bayou. We also paved about 22,000 linear feet of streets. And what you see on this map, if you see a red line, those were where street work alone was done. Blue lines is where only drainage was done. And then purple is where you will see where both drainage and street work was done. So to give you a list of the work, you'll have this here. Much of our work, especially with using Texas drainage, about 33,000 linear feet of roadside ditch was done. And here's a full list of those streets. You've probably heard these streets' names ad nauseum through the year. Nature Chem did some major work for us on our major outfalls. They're the ones that went into our deeper, larger drainage features. And they cleaned out a massive amount of those areas. I would say Borden's Gully was probably the most stark one I heard the most people talk about was Borden's Gully during that time. But we also worked on many others. And then, of course, with roadside ditches, we had California was a big part of that. We also had, a lot of the areas of Nicholstone. So that's why you'll see those streets there. We also worked a lot in with Texas Drainage in the Moore's Addition as well. So you'll see all of those areas highlighted pretty heavily as part of our drainage work and, of course, our road work. In our asphalt work, R&B asphalt, asphalted about 21,000 linear feet, while Waller County resurfaced and repaired about 15,000 linear feet, I think we didn't finish that list on Waller County because I know they did a lot more than Shadow Lane, but they did do a lot for us. But really, this is for a recap to show you what we did in the past year. So there, this is Shadow Lane. Today, this was a very, very cratered road, really, at the end of the day. Just to show you kind of the work that our partners, Waller County, did. So also wanted to let y'all know we did in the Pin Oak project, we did somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,600 linear feet of concrete road. This was all part of a CDBG project, and they also did drainage improvements as well. So this is what you'll see in Pin Oak today. Also, we have been working on the Nickelstone project. This is a much, much larger project. It's, the linear feet on that is much greater. You're probably looking at well over about 2 miles of concrete road there. We're still in the process of closeout on Nickelstone because of how large of a project it is. Here you'll see concrete roads and drainage improvements as well. Also, what has started in this fiscal year, but is going to be carrying over into next fiscal year, is the West Gum Bayou project. This is a major project where we are working on easements and so forth, and really want to thank the school district and county for allowing us to work on making much larger detention basins, as well as widening West Gum Bayou for there to be better flood control on this side of on the east side of town. This is about a $4.3 million project funded by the CDBG. So this is some of the pictures of the work that's been being done at West Gum Bayou. So this used to be a lot of overgrowth. I believe we have at least a couple of council members that are familiar with this area and what it used to look like to what it looks like today. Let's see if I can. Also, one of the things is that, as we've moved along, Alexis and crew have been working very hard on not just working on the whole resurfacing of roads, but also on working on potholes throughout the city. And our work order system has about a little over 1,000 potholes that were filled. Of course, obviously those are temporary fixes. Those are not the long-term fixes, but people need to be able to utilize the roads in those times anyway, until we can get them resurfaced. So kind of going over in our recap of fiscal year 22, and you will see this reflected in the budget. We passed the land use plan, our unified development code, and master parks plan for contract to go out to the consultants. We are working with both the EDC and management district, mainly the EDC on this front, for collaboration on the funding of those plans. Very important to economic development and community development to have these plans in place. And we'll talk a little bit more about where we're going to go with parks. Also in the 2022 year, we established the Information Technology Department, really worked with council members that have a history in information technology to talk about, like what are the important high-level things we need to be striking on in IT. One of the biggest things I can say is that bringing a lot of the contract services in-house has been a huge win for us, and I believe over time what you'll find is that we'll be able to be more responsive over time as we build out the staff on that. Also in communications, if you remember, we added about as a mid-year adjustment our communications director position, and some of y'all may know her. Her name is Jeree. If y'all haven't, just say hello before the end of the meeting. Also, you'll see that we've had a lot stronger social media and website information that's been coming through, because that was one of the big things council asked for, is that we do not get out to the public enough. And so we're not where we want to be, but we're much further along than where we were when we started the fiscal year. And of course, Red, White, and Bayou is coming back. Some of you on the council are on the committee, and also we have many committee members that represent many organizations around the city and are major stakeholders in the community. Also, one of the big things is our collaboration with the management district and EDC on the administrative service agreements is now that we have created a GIS coordinator position. We're currently advertised and doing interviews for that position that will allow us to really enhance our mapping capabilities. We established a deputy city secretary role to support the boards, the EDC management district specifically, but also some of our subsidiary boards as well. And it is also helping us fund the expansion of IT to be a full service area, so full service department. Obviously, we have Red, White, and Bayou. Here's just a few of the things that we've worked on through the year. If you remember our Blue Heron project, we've been working on community surveys for the comp plan, Red, White, and Bayou, and so forth. So also in 2022, we had a refresh of much of the collection, weeded out a total of over 18,000 materials. A lot of it were out of date and were not circulated. People were not picking up those books. And so what we're really doing is now we're coming back and trying to find the type of materials that the community wants and that will have higher circulation numbers than what we had. Also, one of the big things council had asked for was the creation of youth programs. So we started that process with the interns, and we'll talk a little bit more about in the new budget coming up how we're going to be addressing more youth programming in the future. Also in the police department, very eager to say that the patrol boat is coming soon. I don't know exactly when. I know we're working on that. And that we have negotiated a 3-year collective bargaining agreement, first multi-year agreement since in the post-Harvey era of the city. So obviously you'll see that's going to be a similar version of the boat that we'll be getting. If you recognize any of those kids in the top corner there, those were our interns. And they were also had an opportunity to go to Dickinson Historic Society and learn about the history of Dickinson. So one of the big things where we are is our current tax rate in this fiscal year is 40.45 cents. And that includes a 35.2 cent maintenance and operation rate and a debt rate of about 0.51 cents. When I came here to the city, we were at 47 cents. We were at a 47-cent tax rate, and we were very blessed. We also saw some opportunities for efficiencies within the departments, worked with the staff, and was able to get that tax rate from 47 cents and to bring it down to 40 cents. That was a very proud moment. Now, what we're sitting on here is we have a no net revenue rate sitting at around 35.8 cents, which would be basically generating about the same amount of revenues as what the city has today. What was proposed by council sits at about 38.8 cents, which we will talk about how that's going to help us with our public safety aspects of the city, especially in regard to EMS services. So that's kind of where we're at. Proposed is about 38.8 cents, which would be a tax cut, or would be a tax rate cut of about 1.6 cents. So what you're looking at here is just to kind of give an idea of the difference of tax value, kind of what you have in the market value of the average home in the city is about going into this year will be about $258,000, of which that's the market value with a taxable value of about $212,000, of which at 38.8 cents. You'd be looking at a total tax bill for the year of 820. I must be smacking 825.
About to breathe, it's okay.
Yeah, $825 for the year. So based on year-to-year change in the tax bill would be a little over about $5.45 a month, or $65.77 change in the tax bill if the proposed is adopted. One of the big things I did want to talk a little with you guys about is that what you'll see is our current aggregate debt service, meaning what do we pay annually in debt service. What you will find is that our 5-cent tax, INS tax rate is well below most of our sister cities around us. We carry very little debt as a city. That may, depending on council prerogatives, how quickly you want to get to capital improvements such as major roadways, drainages, parks, buildings and facilities, those type of things. Just wanted to let you know that you guys are sitting in a great spot for that. It's also important to keep in mind that there is a drop-off of debt service after the 2030 fiscal year. By quite a bit, you're probably looking at about $350,000 per year in debt service in the 2031 fiscal year. So really overall, fiscally speaking, the city's in a good spot. One of the big things, so I want to go over kind of, before we get into the budget itself, I was going to talk a little bit about the major goals of what fiscal year 23 has cooked into it. Number one is an expansion of EMS service by 4 full-time paramedics. This would allow us to operate a second truck during peak times. Right now, the city currently operates 1 truck, and during peak times, it's not unusual for us to have to call in mutual aid from outside of the city, Texas City and Santa Fe mainly, and only in the most only when we desperately need it do we turn to League City, because they charge us per mutual aid call to come into the city. You also have the salary adjustment that was agreed to with the police association, and that was a 3-year agreement, so that's baked into this budget as well. Also, working with data shared from other cities, we looked at salaries across all of the staff and really tried to find where in the staff were people outside of range or very low compared to the market, and then we tried to get them to a standard place, which would be about the 33rd percentile, not 50 percentile, but at least in the 33rd percentile, to get all positions up at least into range, and that is also baked into this. We didn't actually, believe it or not, depending on some positions, we're actually kind of right where we're talking about in the benchmark. So what we really were trying to do is get other people some of them were completely out of the range or at the very bottom of the range, and to get them up to that same benchmark. Also, was also in this budget and will affect some of the numbers in here is going to be that we have the West Gum Bayou project ongoing, meaning we'll be expending funds while we're waiting on grant funding to come in. So obviously, if you expend funds waiting for receipt of funds, and it'll look like there's like a deficit in place when all you have to do is wait for the next fiscal year, or vice versa. We're also breaking ground on our $49.7 million CDBG project, probably near the end of this. And also, we have the downtown street and parking project and IT refresh. That's part of the ARPA funds that we're talking about now. Combined will be over $5 million, but for the downtown street and parking, about $3 to $4 million. What we have put into the budget for this year, especially in our street and maintenance fund, is to do about 33,000 linear feet of roadside ditches. What you'll see here are the streets that we have highlighted for that. We also have from the Public Works Department about 33,000 linear feet of roadside ditch that they're going to be doing in-house. So we're really looking at doing, well over 5 miles of roadside ditch in this next year. Very important. We're going to be really working in Mariners Mooring and Country Club quite a bit. I know that we have a lift station, a pump station that we need to work on, and we'll be working with the residents there to make sure that we're addressing those drainage issues in that neighborhood. So for those of you that are, paying attention, these are what's in red here is what is going over this next year. I'm sorry. Did I anticipate something? I hope so. If you see here on the red lines here, are the streets that are listed. Basically, this is the work that you're going to see this is going to be, you'll have the red lines designate all the streets and drainages. So we don't have two separate pictures for them, but I'll get the different color for those. But this is kind of all the work we're looking at doing in the street fund. As part of the asphalt work, we're really working with Waller County Construction. They're going to help us with a 5-year maintenance plan. So what you guys will have is over 5 years. We're going to take remember what the engineers gave us. The engineers gave us, here's the list of roads, and this is what you need to do. Now, some of these roads are really need to be concrete streets because of the heavy weight of the traffic or the amount of traffic. Other streets may be more suitable for an asphalt overlay. And so what we're going to be working with Waller County on is for the streets that are deemed to be more more suitable for an immediate overlay. We've highlighted those streets, and those are the ones that you've seen. So the proposed streets such as Dakota, parts of Illinois, 46th Street from Dakota to Highway 3, 49th from Illinois to Minnesota, the dead end from Minnesota to 47th, Ivy Lane and Rosewood Drive, we would be doing a full overlay in those sections. So what we're really looking at doing is really trying to jumpstart our work. And so you're looking at about about $550,000 of street repair work to be done out of the maintenance fund. So we also have concrete streets that we're looking at proposing. Looking at Oleander, 44th Street, 45th Street. This is kind of like right in the downtown area, right across the street. That would really aid a lot of our current businesses. Also up on Caroline, I know that's been an area. We have some major base failure underneath that concrete road up on Caroline. Illinois is from State Highway 3 up to the pipeline. We're also looking at some opportunities to add 12 parking spaces right here on 44th and St. Gore next to that shopping center. That could help us for events, also help the local businesses in that little green space. Big one for us is doing Avenue J, is desperately needed. It's in terrible condition out there. We also have Looning, Pabst, West Bayou, California, and that's coming up through the county, and so we're keeping that in there as well. Park Avenue, and also possibility of putting in like food truck parking and utilities near the Village Green areas. We're working with the engineers on that as well. So between concreting and asphalt overlay, we have a lot of work to do around the city, as you can tell. We're also looking at adding a marsh master. This is one of the areas we're working with the Dickinson Management District about possible funding here. The marsh master would allow us to mow a lot of those drainages that we're currently using Nature Chem to maintain for us. We can in-house that at a significant cost savings. It would also allow us, there's an attachment to it that would allow us to actually pull a sled behind it in emergency situations that could carry about 3,500 pounds, whether it be supplies or people. We're also adding a tractor that we were looking at leasing it to allow us to do right-of-way maintenance on the state highways. When we went out and bid it out to actually have the mowing done along the state highways, it became much cheaper for us to, in the long run, for us to actually lease purchase the equipment and actually use our own staff to do that, and so that we can have a better maintenance program along our state highways. Another thing that you'll see in the budget is that we're looking at digitizing digitizing our plans, permits, and inspection processes. So we're really working with the Community Development Department to put in for electronic submission of plans, and then actually using our state-of-the-art technology for us to actually be able to do faster plan review with our engineers and so forth that we work with. Also, we're going to continue working with the library, and we also have to, one of the big things we're going to be expanding this year is working on the foundation for the library and getting that fixed once and for all. So we'll be working on that. One of the big cost savings in the long run for us is going to be establishing the Fleet Maintenance Division for the Public Works Department to provide support to our entire citywide fleet. So the goal would be to reclass a couple of our laborers into mechanics. We're working with DMD to work on funding the startup equipment necessary for that fleet maintenance program. It'd be something that would be very advantageous cost effectiveness, at least on the cost effectiveness for the city. And lastly, on this one here, on this slide, is basically the purchase of 3 patrol cars, and we'll be using the vehicle replacement fund that we've set aside funding for to pay for these type of expenditures. I do want to take a moment and say that one of the things we're going to do, this is not necessarily a budget item, but it is a goal for the year, is finalizing some agreement with the county for there to be a transition of ownership of the parks. So as part of that, we could have a mid-year adjustment working on having a park maintenance team. Also, I want to put it in y'all's ear now that if we're going to start acquiring parks, and we're already working with developers to add park space, we need to start thinking about a Parks and Recreation Department with especially if we're going to be talking about youth programming as part of a robust park system. So that may be something to put an ear in as we're moving along in the process. Also keep in mind this year, be the end of this calendar year, but in the next fiscal year, 2 tax increment reinvestment zones to be created. I hope what you're seeing through just the goals we're talking about, you heard me talk about the DEDC, you heard me talk about the management district, and I think the biggest thing you're seeing is that we're coordinating efforts, we're a united front across all 3 organizations, and that's what's allowing us to really open up the playbook on things that we can do, because, I mean, this is a pretty robust set of things we're looking at doing in in 1 year, in a matter of 1 year. So, and that would be impossible without our partnership with the management district and the EDC. So as part of that, DMD is doing something very important. This is a high priority project to the city, and that is we are coming close to finishing up and wrapping up a project to begin breaking ground on a $250,000 street light project. We're working with Texas, New Mexico. We're highlighting where street lights need to go throughout the city and having them installed throughout the city. So we're asking DMD to set aside that $250,000 in their next budget, and so that they can fund that. Now, the annual cost of the light bill itself will go to the city, but its initial startup is going to be huge for us. We already talked about the Marsh Master, and also the fleet maintenance startup is going to be phenomenal. DEDC over the next 3 years will be funding about $950,000 to help us with the mobility strategic plan and all these other plans. I do want to remind you guys, the mobility strategic plan is humongous for us, especially if we're talking about doing safe routes to school grants. You have to prove statistically that sidewalks and traffic safety around the school campuses is necessary. And then once you can prove that through these strategic mobility plans, oftentimes the state will pay about 65% of the cost of a project for walkability, bikeability to and from campuses into the neighboring neighborhoods. So very huge opportunity sitting before us there. Also, the city and DMD, along with the EDC, all 3 entities working together on enhancing our business retention and expansion programming for local businesses. As part of that, we created a deputy director role who's going to help us through helping our local businesses and coordination and so forth. We're also looking at doing downtown street coordination. You heard us talk about 44th and 45th Street, Illinois. We're looking at including sawtooth parking as part of this project to help aid current and future businesses with increased parking in the downtown area. And so working with the EDC on how we can fund that is going to be huge, because if we're talking about bringing new businesses in, we have to increase the parking capacity with the existing right-of-ways we have. And of course, we're doing a lot of cross-promotional and marketing efforts together along the way as well. The next steps from here, and then we're going to go into the book itself, and we're going to be going just through the first 10 pages because everything else kind of is an extrapolation of those first few pages. Public hearing on the proposed tax rate and proposed budget again, September 13th, 7 p.m. Also a proposed budget workshop, if necessary. I said 9, 10, September 10th. And we can work on the time, whether it be 9 or 10 a.m. if necessary. And of course, I'd love to schedule time with y'all individually to make sure I'm taking care of your needs if there's something that you don't think that we are addressing adequately in this budget. So If we can go into the book a little bit, guys, I was going to go over a couple of things. Number one, if you go into tab 1, you will see a citywide summary. Now, this one here really doesn't say much. It just kind of gives you, it crams everything on one page. It doesn't do a whole lot. But what it does tell you is that next year we will be operating a $39.2 million budget. Now, that's including operations and capital. One of the things that I would highlight as well in the citywide summary that you'll see in a couple of other places is because we had received money in a previous year, ARPA specifically, we received grant funding to be used in a future year. So what you'll see is you'll see revenues in a previous fiscal year, but the expenditures in this year and next year. So that's one of the things I want to keep in mind. That's why you will see that while it is projecting the loss of 3.1 million on the year, if you look at previous years, if you actually look at the actual of fiscal year 21, it was actually up 5.8 million because a lot of those grant fundings came through in that year and in the current year, and now the projects are being done this year. So like I mentioned, West Gum Bayou, also mentioned a little bit about Hughes Road and those type of things. Some of that funding is pre-funded to us, so that's why you're going to see that. On the next page, what you'll see is that basically what we're here to talk about is meat and potatoes, general fund, because that is what is statutorily required of us to talk about is the general fund, because everything dealing with the tax rate and budget is all around the general fund. What we have proposed today with doing all of the work we just got done talking about and everything, if we keep the proposed tax rate what it is today, we can do everything that we have set forth in this budget, and we would have a $94,000 surplus or increase into the general fund balance. On the next line would be the debt service fund. And what the debt service fund is, basically you have to set your INS, your interest and sinking tax rate to a rate that about equates the debt service owed in that range. And so what you're going to see here is that at the ending fund balance is going to change. It's going to increase by 27,000. So that's why you see a low fund balance, because you can't really carry millions of dollars into debt service fund, because your job is to generate just enough money to pay the debt service, so that in the next year you do the same thing. You don't carry over millions of dollars in there. So we hold about 200,000, and that'll be good for the end of the year for that. In the street maintenance fund, now we talked about all this work we're doing. We're also talking about equipment purchases. And for various reasons, one of the big ones is because of the ballot initiative of how street funding and what you can do with the street funding from sales taxes. There are portions of streets and drainage that can be paid for by the street fund sales tax. And there are portions of it that has to be paid for by the general fund. But what you're going to see here is with all of the concrete work and all of the asphalt overlay and a lot of the drainage work, right now the street maintenance has a nearly $4 million fund balance. We'll be dipping into it by $220,000, and you will end with a $3.76 million fund balance for streets and drainage. Now, before y'all get too excited about all this money, we have a project, California, the big California Avenue project with the county, which has a lot more engineering problems with it than what was initially thought of. So what we thought was going to be a $1 million contribution back in 2019, but between inflation of construction costs, unforeseen engineering issues, utility conflicts and others, we may be grabbing some of that fund balance to help with paying for that. We might be, instead of there being, so don't think of this as, we have 3.7 million. We may actually only have about $2 million of that, because we have to get that project on California done. The county has put up $2 million of their money to get this project done. So. And lastly, you have non-major funds, which are all the things such as like grants and things of that nature. And if you notice, if you see, that's where your fund balance is at a negative by $3 million, because we had received the money in the previous year. So you'll see See how we have we had 2.6 million over in '21, 2.2 million projected for this year, but now we have a $3 million deficit in the following year because now we're actually expending the money we were awarded in previous fiscal years. So it's a very exciting time for us to be working on all of these projects. Generally speaking, if we go on to page 4, general fund summary, what you'll see there is you will see a $4.1 million change in the sales taxes to the good. That is kind of not actually the case. What I mean by that is that if you notice our original budget for the fiscal year when we were together, and I was here for about a month, we were taking the numbers that we had at the time, we plugged those numbers in, but come to find out we went well over that for the year. We're actually going to be about $3 million over the projection. And now we're actually projecting another $800,000 over the top of that. Now you may be like, man, this is exciting times. I can't believe it. How is this even possible? Well, unfortunately, because of those 380 agreements that we've agreed to with our fellow businesses that house their offices here, but do business throughout the state and nation. Of that $4 million increase, we'll be paying about $2.7 million out, almost $2.8 million out in 380 agreements to our partners. So it looks good, and it is good, but it's not quite to the magnitude as it would look like on paper. So you have that. I would also say, another thing to keep in mind too is our intergovernmental proceeds has a change in revenue, and that is largely because we have Gum Bayou money coming in, as well as the new ASAs between the EDC and the management district. In regard to expenditures under administration, what you will see there is that we've actually taken functions that were in other departments and put them under administration to put them under a small, basically to limit the number of departments out there. So one of the big ones is we've put HR wholly under administration. We've put the communications director under administration. We also have our customer service rep that was reclassed out of reclassed to a new position as an assistant, admin assistant, and then you have, let's see, what's the other one? And the other one being our facilities assistant, the worker that is under the facilities manager. So what you'll see is that while these positions already exist, we're just making sure that they're all under one umbrella of administration because they kind of work in a city-wide function for everybody. You'll also see that in community development, a major increase because of the cost of engineering. Basically, one of the big things to understand is that while community development is one department, and this is something we're probably going to be working on our chart of accounts next year, all engineering services that are not grant funded, if it's public works, if it's facilities, if it's planning like platting, it all falls under community development, and we are seeing a major increase in the cost for engineering services, and we may want to be looking at how we can curb that in the future. And also you'll see that the fire marshal position has moved has zeroed out and has been moved into community development. Lastly, I would point out on the general fund summary about under citywide services, you will see what is reflected there are the Kinder Keys contracts, the Goodman contracts, and our services with Bayou Animal Services all fall under that one. So let's see. Next up, and I think we already did debt service fund, so I think we're good there. So I'm going to actually go on to, if we go on to street maintenance, which is going to be tab 9 in your book. Street maintenance is really big for us because obviously we can't do a lot of the work that we do without our staff. And if you flip a page over, you can really see the breakdown of the sales tax revenues coming in. The good thing is that in the street fund, they don't reimburse any money in 380 funds. So they get 100% of their allocation of sales taxes. That is one of the big things that's allowing us to do the work that we're doing in the streets and drainage. Under there, you're going to see that, and one of the big things we're adding here is this is where our fleet maintenance is going to be a big part of it. So between salary and wages, you are seeing an increase of 95,000, and that is because we're reclassing positions from general laborers to skilled mechanics. So we're going to have to pay more, and of course, that comes with more benefits and, well, higher cost of benefits and things of that nature. Also, just wanted to mention to you guys that as you're going through the book, there are some special funds. You'll see 3 PID, Bayou Lake PIDs 1, 2, and 3 funds. Those are cash in, cash out. Whatever is assessed by the PID goes to the developer or whoever is designated for the PID. We're also putting $50,000 into the vehicle replacement fund. So we're taking $189,000 to buy 3 patrol cars, but we're also putting $50,000 back in the same year so we can start replenishing that fund. We have a building fund as well. The building fund deals with, we put money into that one specifically for like major AC repairs, foundation repair, those type of things. That's where that fund goes into there. What I would say about most of the others, especially your child safety, court efficiency, court security, court technology, federal seized, state seized funds, those right there, very, very statutorily regulated. They have to have, they're tied to very specific activities within court and PD. They have proposed budgets. They do have limited amounts of money that they're going to be expending. Those have to be spent in some very specific ways, and if y'all would like to hear about those wonderful ways, we can definitely talk about those. The last one I'd really point out to you guys is the hotel motel tax fund. That's where we do a lot of our work with the with tourism and a lot of the events and so forth. And so that's just kind of an overview of those. Let me see how much time we got left here.
Probably need to wrap up in about 5 minutes or
Yep,
so.
got you. Yeah. So what I'd say to you guys is that, that's kind of the general overview of the funds, kind of where everything sits. Wanted to present to you guys, what does that buy at the end of the day? Like I said, one of the biggest initiatives was trying to get a better EMS ratio of full-timers to part-timers because, emergency response is huge for us, especially in with this being the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. And one of the big things we need to do is how do we increase our emergency response and recovery efforts? Well, one of those is that whenever Derek needs to pick up the phone and call on people, right now he has 4 full-timers that he knows for sure he can call in who will answer the call at EMS. This would up it to 8. Because remember, those part-timers work full-time for other cities. And so if we end up in a regional event, those part-timers have to go to their home stations and respond there. So we want to beef up our response. Hopefully this is a multi-year, year-over-year initiative to get more full-timers to the point where we end up with a full-time staff wholly in EMS. Also want to say is that, with the Marsh Master and the patrol boat that's already been purchased, we're talking about 2 assets that we have never had in the city's history to respond in emergencies. So I really think this budget is not only talking about the operations and the things that you would expect the city to do day to day, but we're also adding assets that builds up our ability to respond when we're needed in the community. In closing, I would I have one last request of council besides listening to me for the next minute. As some of you may know, we had one of our staff members, one of the members of our staff who won the Shine Award for excellence. If you remember, we had 2 people win that award. One of those 2 people, Brad Anders, passed away from a heart attack. And Brad, phenomenal staff member. And this like just hit us, like just this, what, yesterday was it? And what I was going to ask of council, Brad was one of the people that won his Excellence Award. And he was always someone that was just a phenomenal human being, and he never complained about any of the work that was asked of him. And he did some amazing work in public works, and I can say is that just over the last 24 hours since this news hit the staff. He's been the great stories of the humility that he showed, and that he was never a person who complained about the work. He never, thought anything was beneath him. I was going to ask, when we present our budget on September 13th, on behalf of Brad Anders, if we could put a memorial page in the budget, as a final goodbye, and make him a permanent part of the family of Dickinson.
Absolutely.
So that's all I have.
All right.
All right, thank you. As we discussed, council, if you would, I'd say on your own prerogative, follow up with the city manager as needed between now. And if we do feel that we need to have that meeting, I know Theo will call for it on the 10th.
And if the 10th doesn't work, please let me know
Yeah.
so we can coordinate that.
But otherwise, the plan, unless there's any for that meeting, the plan will be to talk about this next at the 13th meeting in September. So item 3 is adjournment. A motion to adjourn by Councilman Wilson, a second by Councilman Simpson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.